There was once a young man on his way to a fair with 5 shillings in his pocket. As he went, he saw some little boys beating a poor mouse they had just caught. "Come on, boys," said he. "Don't be so cruel. Sell me that mouse for 6pence and go off and buy some sweets." They gave him the mouse and they let the poor little beast go. The man hadn't gone far when he met a fresh set of boys teasing the life out of a poor weasel. He bought the weasel off them for 1 shilling and let him go. And on a third creature he saved from a crowd of cruel young men. This creature was a donkey, but he had to give a whole half-crown to get him off the crowd. The donkey's name was Neddy. "You may as well take it back with me. I'll be of some use, I think, for when you're tired you can get up on my back." "Grand," said Jack, for that was the young man's name. The day was hot, and Jack sat under a tree to enjoy the shade. As soon as he did, he closed his eyes and he fell asleep, but he was soon awakened by a wicked-looking giant with his 2 servants. "How dare you let your ass trespass in my field," cried he, "and do such mischief?" "I had no notion he had done anything of the kind," said Jack. "No notion? I'll notion you then. Bring out that chest," he said to one of his servants. And before he could wink, they had tied the poor boy hand and foot with a stout rope, thrown him into the chest, and tossed the chest into the river. Then they all went away, but poor Neddy, till who should come up but the weasel and the mouse, and they asked him what the matter was. So the ass told him his story. "Oh," said the weasel, "he must be the same boy that saved the mouse and myself. Do you have a brown patch on the arm of his coat?" "That's the man," said the donkey. "Come then," said the weasel, "let us try get him out of the river." So the weasel got on the ass's back, and the mouse got into his ear, and away they went. They had not gone far when they saw the chest, which had been stopped amongst the rushes at the end of a little island. In they went, and the weasel and the mouse gnawed the rope until they had set their new master free. Well, they were all very glad, and they were having great talk about the giant and his men, when what should the weasel spy but an egg, with the most lovely colours on the shell, who was lying in the shallow water. He fished it out and gave it to Jack, who kept turning it round and round in his hand and praising it. "Oh, my dear friends," Jack said to the ass, the mouse and the weasel, "how I wish it was in my power to thank you as I should like. How I wish I had a fine house and grounds to take you, where we could live in peace and plenty." The words were hardly out of his mouth when he and the beasts found themselves standing on the steps of a grand castle with the finest lawn before it he ever did see. There was no one inside or outside to keep it from them, and so in they went, and they lived as happy as kings. One day, Jack was standing at his gate as 3 merchants passed by with their goods packed on the backs of horses and mules. "Bless our eyes," they cried. "There was no castle or lawn here when we went past the last time." "That's true," cried Jack, "but you shan't be the worse for it. Take your beasts into the yard at the back of the house and give them a good feed, and if you can spare the time, stay and take a bit of dinner with me." The merchants were only too glad to do so, but after dinner, Jack was foolish. He showed them the painted egg. He told them you only had to wish for a thing when you had it in your hand, and your wish would be granted, and he proved it by doing a small trick. One of the guests put a powder into his next glass of wine, and when Jack awoke, he found himself on the island again, with his patched coat on, and his 3 friends in front of him, all looking very downhearted. "Ah, master," said the weasel, "you'll never be wise enough for the tricky people that are in the world. Where did those thieves say they lived, and what names did they go by?" Jack scratched his head and thought, and after a while he remembered and was able to tell them. "Come, Neddy," said the weasel to the ass, "let's be jogging. It wouldn't be safe for the master to come with us, but if we have luck, we'll bring him back the egg." So the weasel got on the ass's back, and the mouse got into his ear, and away they went till they reached the house of the head rogue. The mouse snuck in, while the ass and the weasel hid themselves in the copse of trees outside. "Well, what news?" they said when the mouse came back to them. "Dull news enough," said the mouse. "He has the egg. It's in the low chest in his bedroom, and the door is strongly locked and bolted. There's a pair of cats with fiery eyes chained to the chest, watching it night and day." "Let's go back," said Neddy. "We can do nothing here." "Wait," said the weasel. "I have a plan." When bedtime came, the weasel said to the mouse, "Go in at the keyhole, get behind the rogue's head, and stay there for 2 or 3 hours, sucking his hair." "What good would there be in that?" asked the donkey. "Just wait and you'll know," said the weasel. Next morning the merchant was quite mad to find the state his hair was in. "I'll be a match for you tonight, my fine mouse," he said. So he unchained the cats the next night, and he made them sit beside his bedside and watch. Just as he was dropping asleep, the weasel and the mouse were outside the door. They gnawed away till they had scooped out a hole from the bottom of it. In went the mouse, and it wasn't long before he had the egg quite safe, despite the cats. They were soon on the road again, the mouse in the ass's ear and the weasel on his back, and the egg in the weasel's mouth. When they came to the river, they were swimming across, and the ass began to bray. "Oh, oh," he cried. "Is there anyone like me in all the world? I'm carrying the mouse and the weasel, and the great enchanted egg that could do anything. How come you guys don't appreciate me?" But the mouse was asleep, and the weasel dared not open his mouth for fear of dropping the egg. "I'll shake you off, you thankless pack, if you won't appreciate me," cried the ass. And at that the poor weasel forgot about the egg, and he cried out, "No, no, don't. Down went the egg into the deepest pool in the river. "Now you've done it," said the weasel, and you may be sure that the ass felt very foolish. "What are we to do?" he groaned. "Keep a good heart," said the weasel. Then, looking down into the deep water, he cried out, "Listen up, frogs and fish. There's a great army of storks and cranes coming to take you all out and eat you up red raw. Hurry up, hurry up." "What can we do?" they cried, coming up to the top. "Gather up the stones from below and hand them to us, and we'll build a big wall on the bank to defend you," said the weasel. The fish and the frogs fell to work like mad. They were at it hard and fast, reaching up all the stones and pebbles they could find at the bottom of the river. At last a big frog came up with the egg in his mouth, and when the weasel had it, he stopped, climbed up into a big tree and cried down, "That'll do, guys. The army has gotten a great fright at the size of our walls, and they're all running away." The poor fish and the frogs were greatly relieved. You may be sure that Jack jumped for joy to see his friends and the egg again. They were soon back in their castle, and when Jack began to feel lonely, he didn't find it hard to find a pretty lady to marry. Then they two and the three grateful beasts were as happy as the days were long.